My first question is just a general question for everyone. What was your favorite moment from the rehearsal process? Best memories over the last 2 months?
I'll say one.
Yeah.
Maria mentioned we were all practicing, and it was a really stressful day. Like, we were frustrated about the music and not getting things done and, you know, on time and stuff. And she said, I can't wait until we know it all, and I know we're going to look back at it and just laugh about it. And we're at the point at where we are at that point. So it's kind of nice to know that besides all that trials and tribulations and all that, we're here and we did it and we all came together and stuff.
Nice.
And, you know, the same question, you know, anyone, I'd love to hear the stories of the process. Emily?
Yes. Well, oddly enough, my favorite was the second day of Q to Q. And as people who are in theater know, Q to Q is not always the best rehearsal, because you're basically standing on stage until they figure out what's going on with the lighting. And I don't know what was wrong. We were just really, like, crazy, because we were just so tired from standing on stage that eventually everyone kind of got a little loopy and started making jokes. And then that's, I think, the day when Amanda put the bowl in her head. Everyone was just laughing, and what turned out, and what usually is not our favorite rehearsal, turned out to be like one of the funniest experiences. And I can't even remember what we were saying, but it was so funny because we were all just so tired, we were delusional. But yeah, I like that.
Thanks, Brian.
I was actually going to say those two, but I have another one. It was the day of, what's that senior thing? Merle Bowl. And we were in a vocal rehearsal. Poor Maria and Amanda were obviously very tired. And we were all just sitting in a little group singing the songs. And suddenly Amanda just turns to me and goes, Nunsense, is that for me? And for the rest of the rehearsal, we just sort of sat there and we could not keep a straight face. And that's like my favorite thing in any show, when an entire cast of everybody just can't keep a straight face because you are all together.
Kyra?
Well, I just want to say that, like, I came in on this, like, a little bit later than everyone else, but one specific rehearsal, there was this one scene that was kind of hard to get past because of how funny it was. It's the scene where Emily, she runs in and says, what's the matter? Is there something burning? But Jesus is fire! Everyone was like just dying of laughter.
There's a YouTube video.
Yeah.
And she showed it to us, and there's this woman going, anybody got time for that?
Yeah.
And she wanted me to run out on
Lord
stage
Jesus,
saying,
there's
oh,
a fire.
Lord Jesus, there's a fire! And I couldn't do it, because every time I came in, we'd all start laughing.
That was like my favorite day.
And now a question for the crew. The design of the show, of the set, really matches the whimsy and the humor of the script. So what I'm wondering is kind of a two-part question. What is your favorite aspect of the design of the show? And also, what is something new that you learned about technical theater through working on Nunsense? Yeah, you learned.
Well, the set designer isn't here, Becky, and I actually like the set. I think the set is very interesting. It's very coordinated. It looks almost very realistic. Like you feel like you're in a school. Yeah, Greece. And in terms of lighting design, it was my first time designing a show as a senior, and it was a little difficult at first. And then after the first day of Q to Q, walking in, you don't expect it to be so tough with the directors and trying to get your lights and everything perfect. So you just learn from that, and now I feel like I learned a big lesson.
Let's take a question for Mr. Schwartz.
I'm curious to know how you balance the script with the improvisation that you contributed, and how that process was, and were there moments where things you came up with and then eventually had to decide maybe you had to let it go and couldn't use it, and I'm curious to know how that worked, because I'm assuming there was a lot of improvised moments.
Okay.
At first, it was very weird working with like trying to figure out that balance because during rehearsals there's no audience to like play around with, and we're like, oh, this could be funny, but it might not be funny. And I think really we got a full grasp of that balance when we had that preview performance on Tuesday, because there were so many times in rehearsals where we would do something and Miss McCluskey would be like, you know, don't go too far away from the script, and like, or then there were times where we'd be doing a scene and it would literally go like 10 minutes, like just us being like silly and like fooling around. But really, it happens when we're on the stage. Like, the audience reaction is what really puts us in that like, okay, they think we're really funny, let's just go with it and let's do what they like to hear. Pretty much.
Yeah, Emma.
I feel like for me personally, and probably for other people in the cast, once we got a hold of not our characters in general, like I don't feel like there was any coordinated like balance, but like we didn't have to really think about it eventually because we were so involved with who our characters are that it just kind of came out, and so we'd be saying things that we weren't even sure like that we knew that we would never say, but like I know that in the hallways people have told me that the Brooklyn accent is coming out, and I don't even notice it anymore. And I feel like once you really get a hold of who your character is and who they're supposed to be and their wants and goals, like it kind of just comes out. Like when you're supposed to improv, when you're not supposed to improv, and yeah, what Maria said, sometimes we'd go overboard with it, but they'd always, Miss McCluskey would always let us know when we're going too far with it.
Great. We can take some more questions from the house. Yes.
How difficult was it dealing with the costumes in moving around the stage?
Oh no.
Yeah, Nanny.
Okay, so it was extremely hot. Like I remember at first we were practicing with graduation gowns, and they were black. And we really started getting into it, I think, the week of like Q to Q, so the lights were on us for a really long time, and if you stand on the stage for a long time in that, you're gonna get really hot, and you move around and you don't realize how hot it gets until after you're finished like a dance number or something. And then after we got the actual habits and everything, it was really difficult for me personally because I wasn't used to wearing something so long all for that amount of time, you know, and it was so much fabric, and you know, but after a while you kind of got used to it, and I found myself like I'd be in the hallways and I'd be walking up the steps to class and I'd act like I'm pulling up a habit, and then I have on jeans. So I mean, it got easier over time, but at first it was very difficult. Extremely.
Well, I'll go back in time a little bit. The first day my heels came in the mail from Amazon. That was a very interesting rehearsal of slipping and sliding and falling and...
He loves them.
Oh, yeah. But that was a hard transition because things that I had done early in the rehearsal process, I had to realize, okay, I might be able to do them as me flat-footed, but when I'm on heels, I just have to change things a little bit to fit the shoes.
Yes, Emily.
My habit wouldn't stay on my head
Ever.
for a good
For nothing.
week. It was literally, there's on the line, we still wear our habits to retain our magic spell. At once I just took it off and threw it because I could not take it anymore. It would like slip back, and then at one point it was over my head, and I was just like, you know what, Emily, just take it off because I couldn't do it anymore. And then I got a wig cap, or I made one out of tights, and I had to literally pin it so much to my head that if you pulled on it, it wouldn't come off. And like whenever like we're done with the show, like just before, I ran down the hall and was taking all these bobby pins, and there's probably still some in there because it literally would not stay on my head at all.
Very good. We're going to take another question from Sally.
Okay, Emily, I noticed something very, very different about you. Why were you wearing red Converse instead of character?
Because I'm the streetwise nun from Brooklyn, and you know I don't care about heels. Because Converse are just the best shoes ever, so why? Why bother?
Okay, and then I have another question. What are some of your favorite lines, like in general, for the entire cast? Like, what is your favorite line?
Who do you call?
Okay. Well, as stage manager, you get to watch the whole show from beginning to end. One of my favorite lines throughout the whole show is "Drop kick me, Jesus." I'm debating on getting that on my Camelot sweater. Thank you, Amanda.
And also Brian's "I must be driving Miss Daisy down."
Mine would have to be like from when Sister Marinette is speaking, and she said, "If pain can make you perfect, then this vows for you. Every time you disobey, you beat your ass, black and blue." I'm like, okay, story of my life.
And then?
This isn't really a line, but when Amanda says she's gonna do her tongue percussion. First time I heard that, I was legitimately crying out loud. And it still is. But yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, exactly, with the bowl on her. I love it. She would hit it with a ladle. It was too much.
I like Sister Hubert's line, "Ladies and gentlemen, Lake Superior."
I love when they like get in the huddle and they're just like, "Baby Jesus."
Funny story about that one actually, because Ms. McCluskey wanted us to pick different ones, except everyone we chose just wasn't as good as Baby Jesus. Every single night, everyone loves the Baby Jesus, so we don't switch on and off.
Everyone loves Baby Jesus.
It wasn't in the show, but there was a rehearsal where Maria was doing her dying nun ballet, and Miss McCluskey was narrating Maria as she was flailing and doing her choreography, and we're all just like sitting there dying because she's doing these like crazy narrations of what's going on.
Flailing and flailing.
Oh, but it's horrible! You're
And you die, not yet.
You're dead.
And then you come down.
You're not dead yet.
And then you're
Yes, Taylor.
My question's for Brian. What was the hardest thing for you about playing a woman?
Well, honestly, for this thing, I just like, because I didn't really think of this role as playing a woman. I thought about playing a nun, because not that a nun is not a woman. But like, it's just, I don't know, I feel like there are things that like a woman would do that a nun might not do. So I really had to do a lot of research about like nuns and things nuns do, and like all of the elements of the things worn. And I did a lot of research on trying to get down like the details of everything. Yeah.
The clicker.
Yes, and the clicker.
Yes. My question is also for Brian. Did you have much competition to get the part?
I don't know.
I'm one of those people.
There was competition. It was tough. It's tough. There were many students who tried out who were really good at what they did. What it really comes down to is a combination of who would work all together. And whereas 2 or 3 other people could have been in contention for the main role, I mean, I'm absolutely positive that we have the right cast. But it could have been a combination of other people as well. Again, that's the hardest decision in terms of choosing a cast. It's really hard. We talk about it together, all of the assistant directors and myself. We lay it out. We look at combinations. It takes us a long time, and then until we don't walk out of the room until we're all satisfied that the combinations and the relationships will work well. And not only did they work well, they worked well as people separately. They're great actors and technicians of character. This time, it's one of the best casts I've ever worked with in my life.
Seth.
I would like to know, how was it like moving on a date with the like type of dancing that y'all did in the show? So like, for anyone who did dance in the show, like how was it like on the stage? Yes, right.
I don't know who's gonna call me. But one thing that we all noticed of all the actors, all of us had never done a pat before. We had all been downstairs in the musicals downstairs. But coming up here, we all had to sort of, I mean,
adjust?
Me personally, I had to adjust a lot the way I move because while this is a big show with large movements, you have to tone it down a little bit in this theater because something where in the Ands alone, this could look like that, but in here, if you do this, it will look like this. But yeah, one thing especially that we had a hard time, not a hard time with, but it was hard to do is when we locked things, they had to be changed a lot after we got in the set. Like, we had to know when we had to move that car around a lot because like when we were doing that thing and that thing, we've got to clean out the freezer, that had to be changed a lot because when do we have to move the car, when do things have to be moved around so that we can move fluidly as a group.
Maria?
Like Brian said, it was so much easier when we were in rehearsals and we would like split up into groups and like, okay, you work on this dance, you work on this dance, and like the first ballet that I do was so simple and like normal ballet, and then eventually Miss McCluskey was like, you know, make it funnier, like make it more part of the character, that like she's not actually good at ballet, she just has this ideal image like, I'm the best, I'm good at ballet and I'm gonna be a ballerina. And then it was really interesting when we got this whole car situation going on. And I was like, you know, I'm just gonna bump into things while I turn. And in like the middle of the scene, I'm like bumping into the piano, like, I'm sorry. And like eventually we made it work, I feel, for like, we made it work as part of our characters, because that's something that we've never had to like face in the Anzalone.
Yes.
One personal like problem I had was, one, I've never been in a path, so it was once again adjusting to the smaller space, and also being aware of how you do things in a more, as Ms. McCluskey would say, an intimate setting or space. A lot of the stuff that you would see in the big musicals that you wouldn't notice, like the little stumbles, the little tiny ones, or this or that, you know, like a bobby pin, like she would kill us about. The little things, you would notice them up here, so that made me it made me want to be cleaner, and it made me want to be better and, you know, be more aware of what's going on around me and how I look and how I do things, and making sure I step on beat with everyone and I do the same exact movement as everyone, because you will notice it in this space, and, you know, that's what I took from it.
I have a question for Brian. Is that no, it's like a really easy question.
Yeah, okay.
Is the mole makeup or is it like a stick-on mole?
No, it's makeup, it's drawn on.
Sam.
The eyebrows are real though.
Eyebrows. Singular.
I mean, do you feel it like right now? Do you feel that there's no? I'm actually serious.
No.
Do you, or like after a while, do you just get used to it and like forget it's on?
Well, one thing is that I like to, me as an actor, when I have something like I wore a gray wig in Kiss Me Kate and I have all this in the show, I like to look at a mirror constantly to remind myself, this is who I am.
No, but when you're on stage, do you like forget that it's on? Or, like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, it's been in a different spot for every performance. So, to be honest, you never really know where it is.
Yes or no?
No, you can't feel it?
No. I can't feel it, Mr. Krause.
Yes, Lori.
How do you guys, when you're blocking this, to me, one of the strange things, especially because you're usually working in the Anzalone, that the spaces are two separate spaces. Like you had to keep shifting from facing this way to facing that way, and yet when you had to turn, you really couldn't completely turn your back on one side of the audience to see the other. How was it working that way versus being in a regular proscenium stage where everyone's in front of you?
Amanda?
It's the hardest thing. It's so, oh my god. When I have to go into the audience and do that improv thing, I got yelled at so much from Miss McCluskey because I was only paying attention to A section.
It was
I
a lot
never
of
went to
Miss
D.
McCluskey sitting in the audience going, your back's to the audience! I can't see you! I can't see
Cheat
you!
out your hips so we can see you. Do this.
One thing that also helps that a lot is Miss McCluskey takes so many pictures, so she'll sit there for hours and just go with the pictures back to D, back to A, not loud enough, and just give us all like notes on the pictures so that we can physically see this is the moment where I need to change where I'm facing, and yeah.
She'd also sit in different like sections to make sure we're aware that there's people there. It's easy to forget. When we all walk in, we all naturally go to A, put our stuff down, get ready for rehearsal, and come. it's easy to forget about Dee because there's no one sitting there. So her and ADs and even like some of us during, well, if we're not in the scene, would purposely sit there just to make the situation a little more realistic and make the process a lot easier.
Brian, you bring up the very interesting topic of technology and how, you know, with digital photography you have almost like an instant ability to analyze what you've seen, and I'm wondering what are some of the ways that new technology helped shape this production in ways besides that? Yeah,
the fact that Ms. McCluskey gave notes on the pictures also helped with the lighting a lot. For me to personally step back and see from a photo that the light's not on their face, or maybe they've been blocked differently, so I need to focus the light differently. That definitely helped me a lot with the notes and looking at the photography. That way I know, like, there's shadow here, I need to fix that, or there's shadow on this section.
Yes.
Hi. This is just I just want to comment on how you guys just nailed it. We mentioned the working within a small space. I guess prior to 1979, if you went to Catholic school, where the desks were bolted, and I'm watching this, and the girls came out first, and I'm saying, wow, they look like the nuns when I went to school, the same habits. And then I said, but they're small. And Brian came out. And I said, you got it. I mean, you moved around the stage like Sister Michaeline for me. She would fly down those rows of desks. She was humongous, and she would grab students by the nape of the neck and pull them out of the classroom. But she was fast and she was big, and you really brought it home for me.
Yes.
This isn't a question, but it is a comment, and I think it's probably something that's on everybody's mind in the audience when you people are performing this. But you're convincing us that you are having a great time doing what you're doing, and that helps us have a great time watching you do it.
We're just going to take 2 more questions now, and we'll go to Nick first.
What did you do to prepare for
Oh my gosh. She clicked at people in the hallways. I clicked at people in the hallways for days upon days.
She scared so many freshmen.
I scared so many freshmen, but it was by accident. I would go around clicking, and then I would say the dates of the show. I wouldn't even say the show. I'd just say, at first, before Sandy, November 7th to the 10th, November 7th to the 10th. And then I'd go around clicking at people. And then, because my character, I teach the novices, and, you know, I'm supposed to be this stern figure who is sort of in charge, and who sort of, I don't want to say, yes, leads, and, you know, people look to you for answers and such. So me doing that kind of gave me some sort of power over, you know, it may sound crazy, but it helps me get into the zone, so to speak. So that was one way I prepared for the show.
Maria?
So there was this one fire drill in like,
oh my God,
like the 3rd or 4th week of school. And Miss McCluskey was like, you know, when you see each other in the hallway, you're not talking to Amanda and you're not talking to Nandy, you're talking to the other's character. So I go up to Brian and I'm like, hi Reverend Mother, like how's your day going? I'm like, have you seen Sister Amnesia anywhere? Like I think she's missing. And he was like so caught off guard, and he was just like, oh, okay, we'll find her later. We have to get Robert and we have to make sure we find her before like the show tonight. And we were like, okay. And I feel like that was the first time we established like getting into character, I feel like.
Gabby?
Well, like, even though you guys kind of barely see me on stage, only like a few times, I'm the understudy. And I remember in rehearsals, I had to understudy Leo, I had to understudy Amnesia, I had to understudy Hubert. And I was surprised how I was able to pull, like, characters out of a hat blindly and be able to incorporate every single character like I'm a whole entire different person. It was just insane. I'm like, what am I? Who am I? Am I like a hybrid of some sort?
Right. It's one of the comments I wanted to make before we leave. There are people here that we don't see often, and of course we know about Tech who we don't see.
who in this case are incredibly skilled
You're awesome.
and really work well together and with us as well. But we have other people that we don't see. We have Mary, who was the voice of the puppet. We have Cairo, who was the voice of God. And we do have Gabby, who was an understudy, which was, you know, I think she may have thought that I wouldn't have said anything, but the truth of the matter is she's completely off book for the entire show. She can step into any character right now. She knew from the beginning that because we were an upstairs show that I could not offer her a performance. I could not. She knew that from the beginning and was off book anyway for every character. And the other day when we neither had, you know, at any given point she would step in and rarely did she have to use it. She knew every piece of choreography. She knew every piece of physical comedy. She knew every piece of spoken comedy, improv, and she knew every single person's role. She has worked the hardest on this, and I will not, personally, in the future, forget that she's done this. And in some way, I hope that she'll be rewarded in some other thing. She is truly the understudy of which Robert Ann speaks, who never gets the starring role. She worked really, really hard. One more comment. We're adding, you know, we're trying new things here at Murrow. We continue to try and create new things. It's rare for us to have a musical in an upstairs show. It's difficult as a director to find something with a few amount of characters so that we can do a musical properly in here without being too loud or too soft or anything else. And we had to recruit really good musicians to do this. And these people dressed in costumes, never having expected to do that, and sat on the stage and played, and tried to stay in character. Leo had 4 lines that he really had to say, 5 altogether. You know how it is to play a cappella. We could have done this to canned music, like, you know, so many other schools do. And we didn't. These children both learned scores. There are actual places in the script where it says rim shot, and he has to do it. So Sam is wonderful as well. Costume chicks who decided not to sit on the stage are up here, and they were on time, ready for us. Little things like Jordan, who ran our video. By the way, I will never forget this show because we taped Brian on that beach the day before the hurricane. It's funny, but it's not. At Floyd Bennett Field, which no longer looks the same way. I will always have a piece of Floyd Bennett Field and my friends who have lost things with Brian on it that will remind me of what it was and what it can be again. So that for me is great. And Jordan, who ran that video from back there, and the people who made it, who came out to make it, the Walker family. Jordan, who often took the initiative to fix things ahead of time and say, look, I can do this for you here, send it to me, I'll print it up, we'll put it on an editing thing. Never having to have a conversation with another adult, took an initiative ahead of time and said, Ms. McCluskey, I can do this for you, would you like that? That's professional behavior. Obviously I'm tired, but personally I'm extraordinarily grateful for working with colleagues who support us, with children whose parents allow them to be here at great risk to their home life. And you know, we always say here that family comes first, and we've tried to make that happen. But if you look at the faces of the parents in this audience, they're the same face as mine right now. They're exhausted, they're teachers, they're workers, they're people who support their families day in and day out. And we'll take these children home and cook for them tonight when they go home. And before we go home, when we leave our circle, we have a little circle. This is Eli, and I love him. He lets me lean on him. But before we go home, we have a circle, and one of the traditions in our circle, which I don't think is a problem for us to share, is that at the end of it, we stand in a circle and we talk and we share personal things and we share technical things and stuff. And the last thing we say before we walk out of the room is that it takes all of us to do it. And it does. It takes all of us. In this room, outside of this room. Thoughts and prayers of people who have suffered and sacrificed, the people who have come before us, and the people to whom we owe a legacy after us, as part of the tradition of Murrow and actors and theater and creativity and intelligence and academia and family. We owe it to them after us, we owe it to those that came before us, and I think we've done an absolutely splendid job of carrying that on. Thank you. I appreciate it.
We just have one final question from the audience.
This was not a question. This is a statement. My husband and I are big theater people. We go all the time for many years. We were at a play last night, big cast, a play that was produced many years ago, and we were looking forward to seeing it. It was a Lincoln Center production. And we turned around and looked at each other when it was over, and it was as if they phoned it in. And I'm sitting here tonight saying to you that this cast was so superior. The show, and I've seen many of the shows here, this was such an exceptionally good show. It was directed well, it was acted well, everyone in it was connected, and we all felt it. And a great kudos to all of you.
Just as it took all of these kids and faculty members to do it, it takes an audience to see it. So thank you all for being here.